have been, as you know, many developments since we met last month. Among them, of course, is Trump's idea that we should start drilling offshore, which of course is the most horrible idea for so many reasons. But what remains incredible to me is that although we are all here, there are clearly not enough of us here. That's a 10-second gap. And what's happening is, in the climate, we are going to have a 40-year gap between what we produce and the effects of it. So what we are producing, if we stopped today in greenhouse gases, we will be reaping 40 years from now. Well, frankly, probably I won't be reaping it 40 years from now, but my grandchildren and your grandchildren will be. And I think this is one of the problems, is people suffer from a lack of imagination. They don't understand when they come out on January 7th and look at the blue sky and say, wow, it's a beautiful day in San Diego, that it shouldn't be a beautiful day in San Diego in January. It's winter. That's one problem. A second problem we have is our media. I'm sorry to say our media is one of the culprits that have betrayed us, in that they are not letting people know the true state of affairs of this climate emergency. We are in a climate emergency, and it's getting worse. The latest data indicates that our window for change is closing. And so we are here today to demonstrate that it is still not too late, that there is still much we can do to avoid the worst effects of the climate crisis, but that if we don't act, we will not be able to preserve our civilization.
Thank you, Nancy. Last night on Facebook, I had a little, I'm not sure what happened to me, but I invited everybody to come today, and I said, even climate deniers, if you're a climate denier, please come on down. And what the hell, you may change our minds and we won't have to do this anymore. Is there anybody here who's a climate denier? That's what I thought. Oh. So I think everybody here knows the situation. We don't need to preach to the choir. What we need to do is get more people here. Now, we know the women last year got 60,000 people in San Diego out. This year, January 20th, I think 80,000 are going to come out. Maybe not, because we've had so much more attention on the disrespect that people have paid to women in this society. I think the climate and the women disrespect problem are totally linked. A society that pays respect to its climate, to its environment, pays respect to its women. A society that disrespects its women, disrespects its environment. I think they're totally linked. So we know people can come out, but they're not ready yet to come out 60,000 or even 30,000 for the climate. That's interesting. Only if the people come out for climate are we going to save the human species. It's up to the people. The Congress isn't going to do it. The media aren't going to do it. The corporations aren't going to do it. Academia is not going to do it. And it's left up to the people. We're it. So we'll see. I think it's really fascinating to see if the people are going to do what it takes to save themselves. Now I want to introduce a person who is the chairman of the San Diego Climate Mobilization Coalition. I think of him as the father of climate concern in San Diego. When he was an Eagle Scout, his father took him to hear Dr. Roger Revelle, who started UCSD. Later, when he was teaching at the Catholic University USD, teaching environmental science, he had Roger Revelle come and talk in his class. Later, after Roger Revelle had finished with UCSD's founding. He went to Harvard, and he had this bright young student in his class one day, a fellow named Al Gore. Al listened to what Roger Revelle said and learned at his feet what our speaker right now had already learned at the feet of Roger Revelle. Then he went on to get the Rotary Club, try to get the Rotary Club of San Diego and the world to take on the climate issue. But meanwhile, he has taken on the chairmanship of the San Diego Climate Mobilization Coalition. Please join me in a warm welcome.
Let's get off fossil fuels. That's what we got to do politically. That's what we got to do. That's what we're the point of the spear about here. Don't forget there are other people and institutions who are also point to the spear. For example, the scientists at Scripps Institution of Oceanography. Their great research and their great education is leading the way. And I think that it's important for each of us to humbly recognize that we need to educate ourselves about the different aspects about climate, about sea level rise, about methane, about Greenland, about Antarctica, about the Arctic and its early melting, about the weather changes and the way that the cold weather that's hitting the East Coast now is intricately related to climate warming. Once we educate ourselves, then we can educate others. But it's important that we not be ignorant fanatics. We tried to get the Rotary Club's First of San Diego to take a resolution to the International Convention of Rotary regarding climate. We attempted that 3 times. Each time we were shot down on the local level, and my analysis was that what we were shot down by was Rotary's commitment to courtesy. So they were committed to the thought that if some old geezer in the back of the room would say, "Ah, that's hogwash," they would be courteous to that old geezer and not take some action that he disfavored. And I can't help but think that Rotary itself is changing because the polls show that America is changing. I went to the International Rotary Convention 3 times and had booths regarding climate. And it was very interesting encountering Rotarians from all over the world. And Rotarians from only 2 countries were skeptical about climate change. And those 2 countries were America and Australia, because those 2 countries use coal. Those 2 countries are on petroleum. And everywhere else, we had Rotarians that were informed. And I think it would also be helpful if Derek and I were to get Dr. Ralph Keeling from Scripps Institution to come and talk to us about the Keeling curve a little bit, so that we had some science every time we're together.
Al Gore is the former Vice President of the United States. He has 2 books out, he has 2 movies out, and he has a Nobel Prize. And he can't get this thing done. He can't get America off fossil fuels and onto renewable energy. Neither can the Pope. The Pope is very strong on this. Neither can Jerry Brown. Neither can the future King of England. Very strong on this. So sometimes I take comfort in the fact that if these guys can't do it, then we don't need to feel so bad. But we do need to keep trying.
I'm 81 years old, and I'm not going to give up until I am under the sod. This is the issue that matters to my granddaughter, and I want to be faithful to her. I want to be faithful to her every day of my life. The subject is getting America off fossil fuels and getting the world off fossil
Written
fuels.
2 books. He's one of the most interesting people I've run across in recent years, and a concept he brought to me in his book is the concept of how our lifestyles that we live take more than one planet. It would take, to support the average American lifestyle, would take 4.2 planets. I had not thought about that. So people say there's no planet B, and that's true. But this idea that our lifestyles are really so extravagant, really. I mean, I don't think of my lifestyle as that extravagant, but it's not a one-planet lifestyle. I guess Trump's living about a 15-planet lifestyle, and probably the Microsoft guy Gates, he's probably living about a 30-planet lifestyle. We went in front of his house one day in Washington, 55,000 square feet. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Our next speaker is all about sustainability and living, trying to live a one-planet lifestyle and a whole bunch of other stuff.
This public space thing, I think, is really important, and so I really commend you for it. And the numbers are certainly on our minds. Simply the power of public ritual in a public space on this kind of thing is not to be passed by lightly. It's incredibly powerful and subversive in its own special ways. As you do, I read a lot of things that say, well, by 2050, we'll be at such and such a place, and we'll be able to get off of fossil fuels or whatever the issue is. Or by 2040, I'm still in the 20th century here. In 2040, we'll be able to stop having cars in cities. Or by 2030, something will happen. Or by 2025. Or by 2020. And when I hear these things, I think, well, have you consulted with the planet? Is that the time scale that the planet is on for these things? You know, how much in communication are we with Earth? And then I think, too, can you imagine President Roosevelt at the time, after Pearl Harbor in 1941, say, well, we think that by about 1965 we'll be mobilized to engage in a war against the Nazis and against Japanese imperialism. That wouldn't go over. So the mobilization was able to happen very rapidly. And so that's the kind of intense focus we haven't been able to generate yet, but there is this mysterious thing that happens around critical mass that none of us fully understands, but we all work in our own way to continue to gather and to find allies. I think it's just huge to find those allies. And so a book came out called Blinded by Progress. And in that, as I prepared the working of that and worked with it, a very important concept for me, and I know it's helpful to some others as well, so I want to share it with you today. Derek has alluded to it already. I began to look at something called what I named One Earth, capital O-N-E, capital one word, capital E-A-R-T-H. And I began to recognize that was a whole way of thinking about stuff. It made me think differently about who I was as a human being. I mean, did I have the capacity to live one Earth? Did I think it was possible for our species to live one Earth? Because I kept encountering people who said, no, greed will always defeat it. And I really didn't believe that. I just wanted to dig deeper into, well, what is my view of human nature? How do I really think about myself as a human being? How do I think about you as a human being? Are we capable of this? How can we draw out of one another those best capacities? Because clearly our current civilization isn't really appealing primarily to those capacities within the human being. The whole marketplace phenomena, I mean, the market is the Zeus of our society and now of our global economy. I mean, it's the primary deity. I just thought I was making my life better. I mean, isn't that what we all, I wanted to go to the good schools. I wanted to go to have a good job. And I didn't recognize, I didn't have the consciousness to recognize that this was putting me into a story that is about more than one planet. And so I've been working on having the consciousness of how to live a different story, how to live the story of Earth, how to live the dream of Earth, not the American dream, but the dream of the Earth. Better business idea? I mean, what's the real test? Not is it greener multi-Earth, but is it one Earth? If we have a different curriculum for the school, is it just a more ecologically friendly multi-Earth way of thinking, or is it one Earth? That led me to the second book, and I'm almost done. From Egos to Eden, Our Heroic Journey to Keep Earth Livable, was a foreword written by a woman, a First Peoples woman. So I just raise this up because, again, this is part of my own journey, how to get beyond ego consciousness into that greater consciousness that we are capable of as human beings if we learn how to help each other. The valuable thing in there is that there's about 6 pages of a chart with columns comparing the two world views. You can do it for yourself. You don't really need my book. But just try to, give yourself 2 columns on a sheet of paper. What's one Earth? What's multi-Earth? And just see what you come up with. I think you'll find it a fascinating exercise.